I'm gonna have some fun with this one here. Woo-hoo! In the morning, when I wake up, all I want is marijuana. In the evening, when I'm thinking, all I want is marijuana. If you look in my eyes, you will see what I've done. Every minute, every hour of every day. But life is like a smoke. In the end, I'm gonna choke. So all I do is live my life from day to day.
Oh my God, you know you better watch yourself because I know you're waiting on that one. Cause I'm telling you, cause you know the one that I take off away, but you let me see you do the run. Run, the one that they clan, the one that cause I know you cannot be me now, what you wanna do. Cause I want to break it down, me, cause that's all that, cause you know you cannot fade me now, let you one now. Give it the back of the night because I'm telling you. What bar, can I wonder? Because you know you like the way I put that pick up. Cause I'm telling all your fools what I put up. And in a mercy, now what you wanna do? And in a mercy, now what you wanna do? And in a mercy, now what you wanna do? And in a mercy.
If you look in my eyes, you'll see what I've done. Every minute, every hour of every day. But life is like a smoke. In the end, I'm gonna choke. So all I do is live my life from day to day. You got to get, stick it, bend it, crease it, stack it, burn it, pack it, roll it, poke it, roach it, smoke it, then you pass it to me. You got to lick it, stick it, bend it, crease it, stack it, burn it, pack it, roll it, poke it, roach it, smoke it, then you pass it to me.
Come on, baby girl, let's get it going on. I'ma hit the highway and do it my way.
And good evening and welcome to Raconteurs News. Someone please tell me if this is too high or too low. Good evening. Ade, are you there, mate?
I am, yeah. I am, mate. That music was a bit loud.
Was it a bit loud? I'm gonna have to try and do something about that. I'm gonna have to try and get some sort of balance between the music and the voices. I'm checking my voice is not too loud.
No, your voice is fine, mate.
Oh, cool. Well, good evening to Raconteurs News. My name's Jason Holmes. It is going to be the last Raconteurs News before I go into hospital. I have my operation on Thursday. I'm going to take tomorrow night off, spend that time with my wife because I'll be in hospital from Wednesday for God knows how long. So this is the last one before I go off and have some surgery to my leg. So it should be a good one. And we've got some guests as well tonight because everything's been up in the air. We've not been able to have decent guests for a long time, with the exception, of course, of Super Leeds, who covered on Friday stunningly well. He did absolutely superbly. Hello to everyone in the chat room: Stormside, Dave Iron, Johnny Jamshovel, Matthew Caddy, Uni Black Sister, and Don Telling-Pike. Good, Don Telling-Pike. That's the guy who sent me a lovely email. Ade, how's your week been so far? How are you? What's been going on in Casa de Hardy?
Just the usual stuff, mate. Just the usual bit of work and planning for the holes, which is like 3.5 weeks away now, which is good. Excellent.
Well, yeah, good. I bet you're counting down days, aren't you? I bet you're like...
hang on a minute, I'll tell you.
There you go. He'll tell you. You already know how many days you're just doing that. You're making that up.
25 days, 1 hour, 34 minutes and 16 seconds. Not that I'm counting.
Not that you're counting. Like I said, anyway, we've got two guests tonight. Mark Devlin got in touch with me just before the weekend, and I decided to send an email to the people that he suggested come on our show tonight, or come on our show. They are putting on an event. In fact, it's probably just going to be a lot better to let them tell us exactly what they're going to be doing. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Gloria Moss and Alan of Salisbury. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Excellent. So, well, it's how are things down where you are in Salisbury, Alan?
Well, in Salisbury, they should be okay as far as I know. I'm in London at the moment, but that's Salisbury's where I was born, so I'm Alan of Salisbury. Basically, that's what I do.
Good. Well, you are doing something called Awakeandawareholidays. And you've got an event coming up in December, haven't you? This is the reason why we've got you on tonight to talk about this event. You've got some guest speakers and stuff. Can you give us some, the pair of you, whichever one, Gloria or Alan, can go first? Just give some sort of background for yourselves and how you came to find yourself in this Awaken Aware state.
Well, Awaken Aware is kind of a common expression, isn't it, about people who, should we say, they are a bit skeptical about the official news that they hear and the stuff that's in the media. So they tend to question things. And basically, pick it up, that's my phone.
And so, yes, so there are people who are at different stages of their journey of waking up. Some people
I'm on the radio
are right at the very beginning of their journey, and some people are, been on this journey for a very, very considerable length of time. So the event we're having is focused, and we did this on purpose, not on the current day, not on the contemporary, but on events that are at least 50 years distant from the present. So we're focused on the past, whether it's the near past or the very distant past. Because, for example, I'll be doing a talk on the hidden secrets of the Dead Sea Scrolls site of Qumran, which is the site where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls. But the official picture of that site, I don't think bears any resemblance to what was actually going on at that very important site. And we have another speaker who's also looking at the past. She's looking at the secret history of cities and how a special elite planned to move humankind into cities thousands and thousands of years ago. So that's the kind of distant past. And then moving up to closer to our times, we have John Hamer asking who really was Shakespeare. And you can guess he doesn't think it was the son of the glove maker that we're told about in school. And we have Alan of Salisbury talking about what the official still moon photos tell us about the moon landings. And we have John Hamer talking about the true history of the Titanic. He's giving us 2 talks. And that's an astonishing bit of research that John Hamer has done there.
Yeah, we've had John on the show a couple of times. I mean, first of all, he gave us he's wrote a couple of books, and he's wrote the Falsification of History, and he also, I think there's one on the Titanic as well. He's done a couple of shows. I think we've probably had him on 5 or 6 times over the last couple of years. John was one of the first people that I interviewed, actually, which it never actually got aired. But yeah, a very interesting guy, worth going down and seeing anyway. Because
I was just going to say, even if you don't go for anything else, it'd be worth going just for those 2 talks.
Well, which ones do John Hamer's?
Yeah, anybody who's listening, I've no idea what sort of price you're charging for tickets or whatever. But one thing I can say, having spoken to John quite a few times, his talks will be incredibly interesting, and I always end up sort of thinking, "Oh my God," when I've been speaking to John.
Yes. Well, of course, he's a very accomplished author as well, and best-selling author. I think one of his books has sold no fewer than 50,000 copies, which is incredible, really. And then, as if that's not enough, we have Andrew Goff talking about Hollow Earth and the Knights Templar. There's a really interesting combination of elements there. And Jerry Doherty, remarkable ex-headmaster, now author, historian, who's written about the true history of the First World War. I don't know if you've come across his work. He argues that the First World War, one of the most terrible wars in the whole of human history, which brought about, I don't know, close on 39 million casualties,
Yeah.
11 million military deaths, was actually planned by a small cabal working out of London.
Yeah.
And so his book is amazing, and he'll be bringing this very important set of facts to the attention of the audience. And he'll also be giving a second talk on the nurse, Edith Cavell. A very interesting story behind her, which again is not what we're taught in school, which is the theme really of a lot of this 2-day event. And then bringing us more up to date, we have Mark Devlin, who, as you say, Jason, was the source of introduction for us. And he'll be giving us 2 talks again. One will be on one of the most famous bands of all time, the Beatles, but looking at an angle that is little discussed. In other words, the connections between the Beatles and the occult.
Sorry about that. Oh, my dog.
Sorry, your dog. Okay. So, yes, no, that would be fascinating, the extreme, to see what he says about the Beatles and the occult, because there are photographs showing the Beatles, showing all sorts of interesting signs with their hands, for example, the horns, 666, you know, what lies behind all of this. And then he'll be treating us to a second talk, as if the first isn't enough, with the rather tantalizing title of Electronic Music and Mind Control.
Yeah.
So we're going from the distant past up to the near past. So it should be very stimulating weekend.
Yeah, it should be, and it's in December, isn't it? I mean, it's quite close to Christmas. How did that come into play? I mean, I would imagine venues would have been quite busy, and you would have been paying a premium.
Well, quite. It was quite difficult you're absolutely right, to get a venue for this time, particularly a venue that's no more than about 40 minutes from London. So it's very easily accessible. It's in a countrified environment, so you can kid yourself that you're out in the middle of nowhere, even though you're only about 40 minutes from Liverpool Street. And we've tried as hard as we possibly could to keep prices as low as possible, because we want this to be, if you like, the ascot of the alternative world, a chance for people to celebrate in the run-up to Christmas, get together amongst like-minded people, because we think there are relatively few occasions when we can actually rub shoulders with other people who are on this awake and aware journey that many of us are on. And talking about price, we have a website, and you can see on the website, and Alan can probably give you the website at some point in this chat. We've got some early bird rates, some really attractive ones for August. I know it may seem a long time from December, but it's quite helpful to get bookings in before we actually have to commit. There's quite a big financial commitment in the middle of September. And we've got some discounts also for beginning of September. And the last thing before I hand you over to Alan is we're also making some spaces available for attendees who have particular areas of historical research that they would like to present. We've got some short slots, so we open up the field to others, which will be very exciting.
Yeah, so, you might regret that. From time to time. I've put the at the bottom of the screen. People can see Awake and Aware holiday.wixsite.com website /location. So I'll put the link up there, and I'm sure that I think that's the one that I've also put it in the chat room as well.
Oh, thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you.
And there's also an email which perhaps trips off the tongue. Well done for doing that one even more easily. And shall I just say the email? You can contact Alan and I on this email, which is nice and simple: awakeandawareholidays@gmail.com. So please don't hesitate to get in touch, and we can forward the website to you. And there's a nice little video showing you the venue and me introducing the speakers there. So I'll just give you that email again. It's awakeandawareholidays @gmail.com.
There we go. We'll put that up on the
Yeah.
screen as well. There, Awake and Aware Holidays. Is this the first event that you've Awaken and Aware Holidays? Is this the first event that you've set up? You've organised?
This is the first one I've done with Gloria. We've been involved in just sort of evening events, that kind of stuff that we could say is under the banner of Awake and Aware. But we got together really because you tend to go to, say, an evening talk or something, and it's really good, and then it is over, and there's a whole load of people in the same room, and they ought to go their separate ways. So we thought, well, wouldn't it be a good idea to get a weekend place together where people could just, come and stay. They've got a bed for the night, all the food is laid on, it's in lovely grounds, and it's all in-house. And doing it that way, then people can get to meet each other, and it's about like-minded people coming together, really, and it's kind of a social event as well. And also getting back to what you're saying about people attendees, if you like, getting up to speak. We wanted to make it inclusive because we were aware that there are a lot of people that, off their own back, they do a lot of research, and they don't really get a platform unless they kind of really put themselves out. And that's quite a lot of work for people to do, as we're finding out, and as I'm sure you guys know as well. So if we just created a bit of space, so they come and see us and say, okay, what have you got? Have you got a PowerPoint? Have you got all the, bits and pieces like that? Because I finished an event a few weeks ago at the Green Gathering, and they had a dome there, a talking dome, the Voices of Gaia it was called. And there were some amazing talks going on about all kinds of subjects, and the input that people were putting in. I just thought there's just a wealth of knowledge out there, and it really doesn't get a chance to be heard. So part of the things we wanted to do in this event is to be able to give a platform to people like that, really.
And you're giving a talk, aren't you, Alan?
Oh, yeah.
I was looking on the website beforehand, and I made a list of speakers in front of me, and it's quite an impressive lineup, I've got to say. I mean, you've got Mark Devlin and John Hamer. Those are the people that I've actually heard and I've spoken to before. And there's yourself. What would you say separates you from these other events that are set up? Like, I know Ian Crane sets up one up, doesn't he, with AV, whatever. I mean, what makes you different from that? What would your unique selling point be, as opposed to AV, whatever?
Well, firstly, what I've just said, it's an inclusive event. So it's not where you sit there and you have people talking at you. Okay, there's a little bit of a social thing, I should imagine, at Ian Crane's event, but we're more inclusive. What another project that we work together on is inclusive leadership, that kind of thing as well. In fact, Professor Gloria Moss has written a book on that, and that's another sort of thing that we're working on together, because we think it's time for our society really to become more inclusive, as opposed to this hierarchical, transactional.
Oops, have we lost you a little bit?
Yeah, I think we have, haven't we?
Get together, if you like. Awake and Aware is about introducing that concept and seeing how people can roll with it, really.
Yeah, and this is very dear to my heart too. So this is why we've reserved some short slots at the end of each of the 2 days, both the Saturday and the Sunday, for attendees to present. And we would invite anybody who's interested in presenting to submit some ideas to us, because we have just a few slots. We've already got somebody who's offered to present a very interesting topic, the true history of racism in Britain, I think, is the topic of that one. And these will be short 20-minute slots at the end of each of the 2 days. And then the other thing I would say that sets us apart from the kind of events that you discussed was the fact that this event is focused on the past. It's not focused on the present, because there are, as you said, there are plenty of other people who cater for that particular space of looking at the contemporary. And as I said before, that's not what we're seeking to do. We're seeking to question history. And our definition of history are events that are separated from the present by at least 50 years. So that gives us more perspective, because a lot of evidence amasses in the period of 50 years. So I don't think there is anybody actually in this space looking critically in a rigorous way at history. And the two speakers you mentioned, you highlighted, Mark Devlin and John Hamer, are meticulous researchers.
Mm.
You know, so this isn't airy fairy. This is fun, stimulating, but extremely, how can I put it?
Sociable as well.
Sociable, but also very. The speakers know what they're talking about and will present fine evidence to support what they're saying.
You've certainly got something unique going on with the subjects, and you are quite right. The events that tend to take place, even though there are nowhere near enough of them, but the events that do take place do tend to be about the here and now. But you know, in true education style, the only way you can avoid something nasty happening in the future is to look at the past.
Well, absolutely, and I remember from my A-level days, which is a little while ago now, but I studied, amongst other things, the work of a 5th century BC author whose name was Thucydides. I don't know if you've ever come across Thucydides. I read his work in translation, I hasten to add. But he was back in 5th century Athens, saying that the reason he wrote his history, and it was the war of Athens versus Sparta, which sounds very parochial in modern day terms, but that was a very big war and his book was very long. He said he wrote this book with the sole purpose of allowing future generations to learn from the lessons of the past.
Yeah.
So I guess that's one of the reasons that Alan and I are doing this. So we can understanding what's happened in the past helps us in the present. Would you say, Alan?
Well, there's a kind of psychological precedent here where it's called you look for the process of something, and because the content will change, the detail, the times, the dates, the story will change, but after a while you see a pattern of behavior that repeats itself over and over again. And I think that's what we're aiming to do, because these are very interesting subjects. But of course, the people that we're hoping to attract are also very aware of what's going on in current affairs. You know, I mean, we go to these events. I mean, you mentioned Ian Crane. I mean, he's really doing a lot of good work, making people aware of the 5G and all that kind of stuff, which is a hot potato. Whereas we're just stepping back from that period on the 9/11 stuff and all that other stuff that we're all very familiar with, to get into, if you like, a bit of classical history, something that's far enough away, a few generations away, although, you know, the stuff that Mark Devlin is doing isn't that far away, although arguably we could say life is pretty short in the entertainment business, so it might be a long way considered in that. But we're looking at the process, and I'm really looking forward to Mark's talk, certainly about the occult aspect of the music business, as I'm sure you're quite aware of that as well. And it's that is a current thing, so it's quite nice to go back to the history of that and to see the signs of that emerging in the 60s, even if it was there before, you know.
That's a way to connect dots. I mean, you might see if you just had a blanket look at what is going on at the moment, it wouldn't jump out at you. But when Mark and I've got to say as well, another one of his associates that we've had on, Matt Sergio, who's been on this show as well, who does he's a real Beatles like Beatles mad sort of guy, and he's always doing research into the Beatles. So if you look backwards, you can see, and it joins dots, as David Icke says. You know, you join the dots to who is where and what is and why things are happening the way they are now.
Yeah, very much so. Very
Yes.
much so.
So holding a mirror to the past can hold a mirror up to the present, I think we're all saying. And we also felt that there weren't many fora in which this was actually happening. Okay, you might say, well, this is happening in the academic world, in universities. But some skeptics might say, well, actually, that academic system is in reality quite a closed system, which encourages thinking within an existing paradigm. but punishes departures from
Yeah.
existing paradigms.
Yeah.
And there's a very knowing yes I'm hearing there. I'd like
Yeah,
you to do. So we thought there was a space that isn't currently occupied, where we need to have this space so we can present dissenting views about the past. Sorry, please give us your thoughts.
I was just thinking about the education system and when I was at college and all the stuff that I've done in universities. I hasten to add, not taking any indoctrination, but I mean the work that I've done with entertainment, etc., within universities. And a lot of that, of course, has taken place in the with a social committee, and we used to see that those were also the people who demonstrated against a mountain of things. But nowadays there is no demonstrating by students against anything other than in this little closed. There doesn't seem to be any sort of outward-looking ideas. You know, they might demonstrate against having a lack of money for a certain portion of the people who go to uni, but there doesn't seem to be anything big that sort of pushes that anymore in any university. Or I might be wrong, but it just doesn't seem to be as, I hasten to use the word, I don't know, militant maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to generalize, but this was one of the drivers for us to put on this event, that we don't think there are that many spaces that allow for this kind of questioning of orthodox history.
Yeah.
And there need to be spaces. As Thucydides said, we need to understand the past in order not to repeat mistakes in the present.
The truth is, though, is that the history as we're taught it is actually just the what word can I use? The elite using the same system over and over and over and over and over again to get one over on the rest of us.
Well, it would seem to be like that. I mean, a very cynical way of looking at it, which I find quite difficult to argue against, is that what is history is really propaganda.
Yeah.
And it becomes history after a period of time when it's been interrogated by individuals who haven't got a paycheck or an income stream to worry about. Because we find so much so with the universities, you end up with a clique of professors, and they're all quoting each other, and maybe only one of them has got the source material, and he'll publish that, and that'll get peer reviewed, and everybody will quote from that. They won't actually go to the source. They won't actually go to the diaries or the original source. They'll just be quoting from each other. Whereas I think the more alternative guys, certainly our speakers, have gone, okay, well, we know what the official story is, and we know who wrote this and who wrote that. They're all quoting each other. I'll go to the source, I'll go to the documents myself, and I'll put it together myself. And these people, they come up with a completely different version. Yeah, but the other thing, if I could just add, is they haven't got an income stream to worry about. In fact, in many ways, a lot of these speakers have, lost jobs. It's cost them to actually do this research and put it out, which is, in my mind, is very not only courageous. It's a mark of integrity, which I think is sadly lagging in the educational establishment these days. And that's a terrible thing to say, because that shouldn't be what education's about. Education should be cutting a bow wave, a white foam into the, fearlessly going towards the truth. And that isn't really what's happening at all, Yeah.
It just mirrors journalism, really, doesn't it?
Indeed, it does, sadly. Or what used to be known as journalism.
Bringing on this, putting on this event, what would you say the biggest obstacle that you've had to overcome? And also, I'll make this a two-part question, because I know that in the past, John has been, he's supposed to have been speaking somewhere. He was anti-Semitic. Have you had any problems like that?
No, we haven't had those problems. And I mean, we've got a very wide range of topics, but we'd like to think that the topics are not such as to cause crowds to amass outside the venue and shut us down. I mean, that's not to say that they're not fascinating and controversial, but this is a relatively safe space in which we can have very stimulating debate about the evidence. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's.
Alan,
So I don't think there's much here that would upset anybody really big time. It's kind of too far in the past, and certainly I don't see that certain organisations would be wanting to boycott or protest outside. As you said, there's nothing anti-Semitic, I think, at all with this. In fact,
I don't anti-Semitic about John Hamer at all. I've listened to his stuff. I don't think there's anything. In fact, most of the things that are where people scream anti-Semitism, I don't think are anti-Semitic. I just wondered whether you'd had any sort of problems. And of course, they were the first part of the question where I said, "What was the biggest obstacle you overcome?" Did you have any problem with the venue or anything like that?
Well, as you said at the beginning, or before we came on air, we wanted this to be a Christmas celebration, if you like. It's a dark period of the year, around the middle of December, and so we thought it'd be a nice time for people to get together. On a practical note, the speakers will be coming with books and videos, so there's an opportunity to purchase gifts if people want to do that and have them signed. But it was quite difficult to find a venue that had capacity at this rather busy time of the year. So that was, I suppose, one challenge. I've personally faced some challenges with some of the research I've done. For example, the research I've done on the Dead Sea Scrolls, that questions the official narrative. I didn't set out to do that. It was only on looking at the evidence that I found that the picture that was presented to me by the evidence didn't fit the official picture of this important site of Qumran by the Dead Sea. And at that point, I found it quite challenging to get the research published. I did get it published in the end in about 5 journal articles, but these were not mainstream. These were not journals focused mainstream on Dead Sea Scrolls. It would never have got published in those particular journals. I found homes for these articles in other journals. I mean, fine journals, but they weren't mainstream Dead Sea Scrolls journals. So as Alan said, a lot of people have to work very hard to get their information out into the public domain, because there are many forces, shall we say, that perhaps work to reinforce existing paradigms rather than provide a welcome to new theories that maybe question those existing paradigms.
Well, that's something that we've tried to do on Raconteurs News. We've had people that wouldn't ordinarily have had a voice, wouldn't have had an audience, and got them on and spoke to them. And that's one of the things that I find fascinating about your event is that you're going to have like an open mic sort of part. So if somebody came along, and this is not, I'm not going to come along for an open mic bit, but if somebody went along, if they were, I know you're talking history mostly, but if someone wanted to talk about 5G or somebody wanted to talk about something that was up to date and in the news at the moment, would they be okay to do that?
Well, I think the only opportunity will be providing a forum that's got a stage, it's got a PowerPoint, it's got a screen. That's, if you like, the professional standard, as you know, with Jerry, and that's the kind of forum that we're providing. And we wouldn't be providing stuff about 5G for all that. However, having said that, the reason we've got this as a weekend event is there's plenty of opportunity for people to exchange ideas about 5G and to talk about that outside of that, because we're all together under one roof anyway. So there's no kind of limit really there in doing that. It's just that we want to maintain some kind of, if you like, professional standards. So if people do want to talk, it's like, well, have you got a PowerPoint? You know, because most people who've got a PowerPoint together, that means they've got something together. They can stand up there, and that's yeah.
If I could just add to what Alan has said, yes, there will be opportunities for people to chat over the meals, for example, breakfast, lunch, dinner, teas, coffees, and we would encourage anybody who would like to present to submit ideas to us ahead of the event. So rather than just turning up at the weekend, that we could have an opportunity to look at what people are proposing to present, because it's important to have a measure, should I say, of quality control. We're not censoring the work, but as Alan said, it's important to have polished presentations.
Something to say. It's important somebody's got something to say.
Yes, and that fits within the brief of questioning history. So, and we've defined that fairly broadly, I would say. We're defining history as anything that's at least 50 years from now. From here we are in 2019. But we would encourage people to submit ideas ahead of the event, because we've only got a relatively small number of these spaces available towards the end of each of the 2 days.
We're planning other events as well. We'll be planning other events as well. We've got some of them abroad. We've been looking at locations in France where we could focus on the location and the historical stuff that's happening around there. So, maybe do it for a week so people can go for walks and check it out. I know the stones at Karnak or something like that. Energy lines, battlefields, whatever the location is, maybe down to the Languedoc region of France, the Cathars, the Montségur, all this kind of stuff, the Knights Templars. So we go to a location where we can find a place similar to the one we've got organised for December, where you've got a large house, really good bedrooms, all in suite, nice rooms, but where people can sit and chat. And the food is, the catering's all taken care of. You don't have to worry about anything. And so for people to really socialize and come together, we've got some really good ideas for going on for the future, really.
Yes, I mean, one of the French venues we were looking at was in Normandy, because that's such a hotbed of interesting events there. We've got William the Conqueror, his claim to the throne. How valid was his claim to the throne? We can look at the Bayeux Tapestry and study propaganda, going way back to 1066. And then, as Alan said, we've got the World War battlefields. So there's a lot to discuss. So this is a holiday with a difference. I think many people these days are quite tired of conventional holidays, beach holidays, seeing the Baedeker sites. Anybody with curiosity wants to dig a bit deeper, I think, than that, metaphorically speaking, never mind the sand pits and so on. And there are, so many interesting sites to explore in this way in more detail. Malta's another place. It's extraordinary. Malta has an extraordinary history. Were there giants living there? Aliens? Who knows? So that's another holiday that Alan and I was thinking would be a good centre, with some very stimulating speakers and talks.
And why not invite 500 other people along on your holiday? Sounds great.
Well, yeah, and and make new friends in the process. And
yeah, exactly right. I've written quite a few things down. For all those people who as yet haven't been and looked at your website, what is the date and where is the venue?
Well, the venue's about 30 minutes outside of London, and the date is the 14th and 15th of December. So it's for the weekend. It's all in. You can either drive there or take the train, and all the details will be given when you sign up. Basically, that's the
cool
on how to get there. So that's sorted out. The other thing I wanted to add before that is the other thing we noticed, once people become awake and aware, there's kind of no going back. If you see what I mean. So it's there's no going back to that where we would go on holiday and just get into excessive eating and drinking and stuff, which I've got nothing against. If people want to do that, that's absolutely fine. But I personally find I need to be doing a bit more. I need a bit more stimulation than that, really. And of course, the other thing is we've got the early bird tickets. So we're doing a discount because obviously, if we can get our costs covered as soon as possible, we're we're going to be much more relaxed. It's a lot stressful, and we can spend time doing other things as well, just honing and smoothing down everything that's required really to make the event a success. One of the things I'd like to do is to video all the speakers, so there will be videos, whether they go on YouTube or whether they'll be DVDs, or whether I give them to the speakers so they can do that as well, because we've been involved with a number of projects. I myself run Pax Vista TV, which did the video, you may or may not have seen it, with John Devlin talking with the Keep Talking crew. I was amazed that video about the Beatles. I couldn't believe it, 17,000 hits in 3 weeks. You know, there certainly weren't nothing like 17,000 people in the hall, but there was a lot of people interested in this kind of stuff, and certainly what Mark Devlin was talking about, the Beatles and the Paul McCartney thing. I've just been blown away with how that. I mean, I think it's got over 20,000 hits now, and I just thought, oh, it'll be a small thing. People aren't going to be that interested in it, but it's and it shows a process again, which is what we were talking about earlier. Because I think if people watch that video, they probably think, well, if the system does that for a pop star, what do they do about the really big stuff?
Yeah,
you know, and I think that's kind of what we're trying to reveal in this event. Is nothing new about the way things have been put into the media or put into the press, and we just accept it, sort of carte blanche. And then somebody sticks out and answers questions, and then there's a reaction to that, and they dig a bit deeper and they see actually things aren't what they're saying. You know, it's not the way it's been said. So I think that's kind of what we're trying to. It's about questioning the official version of history. Why is it the official version of history? You know, because seldom is the official version of history there because it's the truth. There are lots of other agendas going on.
And we're not questioning for questioning's sake. We're being led by the evidence in all instances.
Very much a forensic.
Yes. So it's not like we're starting with a mindset of trying to overturn official history. No, that's not how it works. Well, what happens is that, as you probably know, and your listeners will know, that as soon as you start to explore something, you start to find anomalous facts, anomalous pieces of information that don't fit the mainstream. And that's what leads you away from the official version of history. And
well,
so
almost,
it is. Sorry,
almost every time we talk about almost any subject on here, find yourself thinking, well, the only thing we do know that is definitely true is the official story is rubbish.
Well, yeah.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's like my research on this Dead Sea site of Qumran. It's built as a site that was in the middle of nowhere. Well, it seems like that today. That was inhabited by a group of reclusive religious Jewish people, and a small group. They're described as being a small group. And then you come across the fact, okay, well, there are cemeteries all around this site, and in each grave plot, there were not one but two corpses. And when you start doing the arithmetic, you find that there were hundreds of people buried in these adjoining cemeteries. Well, how is that consistent with the fact that we're told that this was home to a small group of people? Well, it's not consistent, is it? So that
it doesn't matter what the subject is. You've just got to find that one thing, and then all of a sudden, all the dominoes tumble.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's it. That's it. And so from that was born a new theory, when you come across other pieces of anomalous information, like all the corpses seem to have madder dye in their bones. Madder, MADDER. Well, what was that about? I've got some answers to that, which I'll share with people at the weekend. So as you say, it just takes one or two pieces of anomalous information for the whole pack of cards to come tumbling down.
Well, just to quote David Icke, he often talks about the elite protecting that first domino, because once that first domino's gone in somebody's head, that's it.
Well, most of it's held together by assumption. People assume things. They make these erroneous assumptions that the system is the way it is. And part of the work that I did before, which was researching the law and things like that, I did quite a bit with John Harris and all that kind of stuff, is people make these assumptions. They think when you go into court, it's like this and it's all about justice and it's going to be worked out. It doesn't cross their mind until, of course, they find themselves in that situation and it's happening to them. And then they realize that all is not what they thought it was going to be. It's a very different thing going on there at all. And some of the stuff that we worked out was the word magic and all that kind of stuff that's involved in the law. It sounds like English, but it isn't English. These words have very specific meanings. And if you don't know what they are, you're likely to become unstuck. But until you find yourself...
Jason and I were stood in a court in Barnsley, and he made the clerk of the court dismiss the magistrates and walk out. And as they did, I shouted, "What a load of bollocks!" And nobody did anything because, of course, bollocks means confusion.
That's right. I think it's a military term. It means to set into confusion.
Yeah.
Bollocks. Talking bollocks means to set into confusion. It's a legal term, and therefore, in that particular setting, it's a perfect valid thing to say.
Yeah. Exactly. So, and you're quite right. It doesn't matter what the subject is. The official story is just not for your benefit. So why would you believe it? And the people sat in the bar will come up with an awful lot better idea of what really happened, because they'll just be having a natural debate about what would be logical if putting themselves in that person's shoes at that time in history. What would have actually occurred?
Well, I recently did that with Gloria. We were looking at what's the name of that professor?
Johnny Mack.
Johnny Mack. He was the Harvard University professor researching about extraterrestrials. He was a psychologist. So people listened to this guy. He was a big guy in his field, and he was knocked over not too far from where we are now, top of the Northern Line. And the idea that people were saying, no, nothing untoward's happened at all. He was just another American who looked the wrong way crossing the road. So I got my cameras out and off we went on the tube, same evening, same time, everything like that, just to see if it was possible. And I shot the footage. I mean, I haven't put the video together, but you can watch the footage of us walking there and you just think, no way does that official version. And there were so many people, like Americans saying, oh, no, it didn't happen. There was nothing untoward's happening. Well, all I'm saying is that the official version of what happened, if you follow the footsteps, you'll see it was impossible. It couldn't have happened that way. I'm not saying what did happen. I'm not even going to speculate on that. But all I can say is, if you watch the video, step by step, stepping off the tube, walking up through the barriers, turning right, going down the hill, no way would you make the mistake of looking the wrong way, crossing the road, especially if you're a very bright guy who's visited the country many times before. That's not what happened.
Absolutely what Alan says. And I think some of the reports talked about the road being quite dark.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas what we found was that it was very brightly illuminated, this road. And there were hardly any cars either. I think it was 11:30 at night, wasn't it? That he was alleged to have been knocked down.
I stood in the middle of the road, or you stood in the middle of the road, and I went to bowl as if we were playing cricket. I could have bowled that. You could have hit. I could have caught it. There was hardly any traffic at all at that time of night. And there were a lot of things that weren't right about the official story, and it's when you put yourself in that location, if you like, on the grassy knoll, so to speak, or looking in the drain on the road under the grassy knoll, and you start looking around and then you look at the book suppository and you say, nah, I don't think that's a shot, mate. That can't come from there. You begin to put things together. But it's amazing what people will take. They'll read it, they'll see it, and they go, oh, yeah, that must be what happened. But it's only if you literally, and in this particular case, follow in the footsteps, you just say, no, that's that. Not only did that not happen, it couldn't have happened. That's the point. It's like the official story, it couldn't have happened. You can see why it couldn't have happened. That doesn't mean to say you can speculate what did happen or whatever. You just know that didn't happen. And so then what you do is after that, you say, okay, if that didn't happen, then what did happen? What is the story? And that's when you start doing the research.
Yeah. And it's also, if that's what we're being told and we know it didn't happen, why are we being told that? Who benefits from us being told that?
Absolutely. Who benefits? That's the quo bono. That's the thing you have to look at first. And there again, getting back to the law thing, there's always that conflict of interest. You know, if there's a conflict of interest in old English law, recently there's been situations where a judge has had shares in a company that was being involved in a court case, and they should have recused themselves. They said, I can't try this case, I've got a vested interest, there's a conflict of interest. But it's very rare that you will see that happening, but a conflict of interest is very clear. You cannot try a case, you cannot be in a case. The testimony that you give, if there's a conflict of interest, you have to recuse yourself, or you have to state what that conflict of interest is. And of course, the system is never going to say that. You're never going to get the Crown trying the Crown for a crime that the Crown did. Well, that's just conflict of interest, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, as I've said many times, when you walk into a court, everybody, apart from you, including your solicitor, has sworn an oath to the court.
Absolutely.
And is an officer of the court.
Absolutely. Their first priority is to the court.
Yeah, because their livelihood relies on it.
Absolutely. So there's a conflict of interest straight away.
Yeah. That's why the best advice you ever give to anybody about court is don't go. Just keep out. Do whatever you've got to do to deal with things way before that happens.
Absolutely, if it's at all possible. But of course, it's a sad indictment, because.
Well, it is a sad indictment, and that takes us to Jerry Doherty, one of our speakers, who's talking about the First World War, and in his magnificent book on the secret causes of the First World War, he actually writes that the wife of the Prime Minister in the early years of the First World War, Asquith, his wife, was a major shareholder in one of the main armaments firms of the time. How extraordinary is that? Yeah.
And of course, my great granddad died in the First World War, as did many other grandparents, great grandparents, and now great grandparents.
And great grandparents.
Not long. Gloria, I've had a message from a friend who's listening, and just getting back to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Carl's very much into 12th, 13th century history, sort of onwards. But he's sent me a message. The entire research on the scrolls was done by people who were not allowed to say anything that contradicts the biblical narrative.
Well, that's very interesting, because the scrolls, when they were discovered in the caves around this site of Qumran, were allocated to a Catholic group called the École Biblique in Jerusalem. And obviously they were Catholic, those people. And the only person who was given any scrolls to decipher and translate, who wasn't a Catholic, was a British academic who many of your listeners may have heard of, one of my heroes, in fact, and that's John Allegro. And John Allegro was an agnostic. He was a fine scholar at Manchester University. He was given some scrolls. And I think he was the only member of the whole team who actually did what he was asked to do, which was to transcribe and translate the scrolls he'd been given. He'd been given something called the Copper Scroll, which was a scroll etched in copper, onto copper. And his transcription and translation revealed the fact that there was a lot of hidden treasure around this site that was supposed to be allegedly home to a small group of religious people. So what was all this treasure about? Well, he was lambasted for his transcription and translation. They said it was a piece of fantasy. But he was meticulous in doing his work. Unfortunately, John Allegro met an early death. I think he was in his mid-60s when he died. And I think at the point of death, he said he had quite a lot of evidence that could be embarrassing to some of the major religions of the world.
Mm.
I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying he was a fine scholar, John Allegro, and he was not part of the École Biblique. He was separate from that.
Mm. Well, even if we just sort of come back to modern times and we look at the Catholic Church and the amount of money, and then of course the leader of the non-Catholic Church, our Queenie, and look at how much money is floating around just in those two pots. That's a lot of funds.
Oh yeah.
Mm. But it is a shame that many of the scrolls that were discovered do not seem to have been transcribed and translated. So it was a surprise to me to find that much reliance is still placed on the record of those scrolls that came from before the discovery of the scrolls in the caves, because there was a cache of documents found in Egypt, and it's called the Cairo Geniza, and a lot of reliance is still placed on that rather than the scrolls that were discovered in the caves. So this is the kind of thing I'll be going into, as well as the evidence that I came across, including the grave plots, which I mentioned earlier. And it all leads in a particular direction, which is extremely exciting, because it suggests that the main function of the site was not just prayer. It was something extremely valuable and important to human beings. It was actually healing. I think they were running a healing site using vastly valuable herbal medicines. So nobody could fault that. But it's not what's reported in the official history of the site. And in fact, some of the scrolls that might give one a clue as to this function of the site have been deemed to be no more than practice sheets, quote unquote. I'm quoting a scholar. So John Allegro produced a particular transcription and translation of one scroll. It's called 4Q Therapia, which he said described the rounds of somebody going around healing people. And then subsequently, an American professor, I think this was after John Allegro had died, said, well, in actual fact, this scroll was no more than a practice sheet, and that the markings were just scribbles. So that was the end of 4Q Therapia.
Couple of things I just want to bring us back to your event in particular.
Let's just hang on a minute, Eddie. Before we do that, let's just let everybody know what they're listening to, because they might have just stumbled upon us, without any will or notion or anything. So you're listening to Raconteurs News. It's Monday night. It's the 19th of August, 2019. We're getting very close to the end of 2019 and into 2020. Good evening to everybody who's in the chat room. We have got as our guests, we've got Gloria Moss and Alan of Salisbury, who's in London at the moment, and they're putting on an event, Awakeandawareholidays. I'll put the website up again shortly, just as soon as we get back in there. I know you said I'd just like to say hello to some people. Don't Tell Him Pike is in the chat room. She'll Destroy, Uni Black Sister, Jerry Son of Mick, Johnson there as well, Johnny Jam Shovel, and of course Super Leeds has been in there. Heath was in there earlier on, and I believe I saw Webby as well, the Webster Report. So good evening to you, Webby, if you're listening, mate. And by the way, this Alan of Salisbury guy might be somebody you should get on your show, because he sounds like you're sort of real good guest. Like, you might be able to get a lot more out of him than we possibly can. We're just talking about the event tonight. The event is happening in December. And it's Awakeandawareholidays. Ada, you had a couple more questions. I'm going to put the website to go to have a look at this and book as well. So
yeah, while you do that. Oh, by the way, if ever you need anybody to talk about the bills of exchange, we don't know anybody. We don't know anybody at all.
Bills of exchange.
Yeah, you just get all of Webby, just get all of the Webster report, and you ought to go on his show. And yeah, seriously, yeah, because
I'm very interested in that. Bradbury Pound, Bills of exchange, all that whole well, what people call money, but it's not money anymore, is it? The promissory notes. They're
we'll have to put them together, Ade.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a match made in heaven. I really do. Definitely think you could get a lot out of it from both sides.
I'm very interested. I mean, I had a Mark. Getting back to Mark Devlin. Mark Devlin had me on his show, and I was. He wanted me to talk about this consent. You know, how we're tricked into giving consent, and the whole show was just taken up in that, and the various ways we're tricked into giving consent. Joinder, consent, but there's a lot more to it. You know, really, just that one little subject.
Yeah. It's like when you walk into court and they say, "Tell the court your name." Well, if you say anything other than "This is not a court," you've just admitted it's a court. You've admitted what jurisdiction you're in, even though you don't know what it is. You've admitted that you're willing to take a beating. That you're the only one there that's been invited to actually part with money rather than be given it. And I'm sure there's a million other reasons why. But that's just by saying your name.
Well, the fact is, it isn't your name.
No, it's not. That's right.
That's the point. It's crown copyright.
Yep.
So when somebody asks you to give you their name, they're actually asking you to give them something that's not your property.
Yeah.
Which,
right.
You know, if a policeman was to ask you to give them their name, and you're saying, well, you're asking me to give you something that isn't your property. Do you want me to go into that shop and take something that isn't my property and give it to you? That would be a crime, wouldn't it?
Mm.
And if you then accept that, if they then accept that as being the name, in other words, if you say, well, my mother called me this and I am known as, but if you write that down in that column as a name and surety name, because that's what surname means, surety name, then you've committed fraud because you've turned something that isn't a name into a name. And the whole thing goes on. I mean, people don't see this. They think surname, they think Sir Hire, you know, but it isn't. It means your surety name. That you're standing surety.
It written down is to hyphenate, is to, put a full colon before your each of your Christian names. And then if you have more than one surname, hyphenate between them, and then a colon at the end. And if you do that, there was about the first 12 or 13 presidents of the US did it. Some of them may do now, but it actually makes you into a man rather than a surety name.
Absolutely. There are other ways around it as well. But that whole subject reveals a level of deception that truly beggars belief, really.
Yep.
That most people, they just assume that they are their name, and that's their name, and that's what they're called, and they've got no idea what name means. They think court is derived from a name like you get tennis courts, and it's a game where there's some sort of game going on or something like that, isn't it? Courtio, the name court comes from courtio. It means to deal in bonds and sureties.
Yeah,
as simple as that. When you go into a court, it's the judge is a banker. If you answer to being the name, you're answering to being an account, a bond, that's your birth certificate, and you're standing surety for it.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. It's got nothing to do with you being a living, sentient man or woman.
And of course, now before you go to court, you've already been told that you've got to fill in this form stating how much you've got in each bank account and how much you earn.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and people do that.
So they've even worked out how much you're going to be raped for before you even walk in the door.
Well, you're already guilty before you've gone in there. They've already passed sentence before you've gone in there. I mean, there's a great film that's been up on the net for a long time called Councils, Courts and Con Men.
Yeah.
About I don't know whether you've seen that one. It's been around. I think most people who've got interest in them have probably seen it. But at the end of that, on the second half of it, you can see the date of the liability order was signed about a day or 2 days before the hearing. So, sentence had been passed. The liability order was already passed before anybody even turned up in the court.
Well, while Jason's been stood waiting to go into court, he's actually seen the courier arrive with the rubber stamp in the corner, haven't you, Jason?
Yeah, I saw a guy came in, I think it was from Lynx. I think that's how long ago it were. Them, remember Lynx? That
Yeah.
And he was going in with and he walked into the doorway, and the security guy let him in, and he said it's just gone to go get stamped. So he went in with a real big bundle of pages, and then he came out about 15 minutes later. So I'd not gone in yet, so he came out and he got them all, and they'd all been stamped. And I'm assuming they were. In fact, I'm sure I heard they were council tax summonses or council tax. What do they call them? Orders. Them orders.
Oh, yeah.
Liability orders.
Liability orders, that's it, yeah. Assuming that's what they were, liability orders. But it were interesting that I could see he just went in, and then he were only gone 10 minutes, come back out with him again. So they'd all just been stamped. Ridiculous.
Well, you see, what we're talking about now is exactly the kind of thing we could be talking about over the dinner at this event. So that's the kind of thing where you get people, like-minded people together, they hear someone talk, and then it spins off in tangents. And if everybody's there like for 2 days, it should be an amazing exchange of ideas, information, little snippets of knowledge that, you may think somebody just might throw in that thing that surname actually means surety name. And that could be just a little gem that goes, oh yeah, that makes sense to me now. Somebody came to me the other day, they said human means the color of, and you've heard this expression, it's not the law, it's the color of law. So you're not being treated as a man. A human means you're the color of a man. So that's less than a man. And the color of the law means, no, it's not the law. It's something else that's the same color. It's a less than. I thought, human, yeah, well, maybe it is, or maybe it isn't. I don't know, but it's just certainly something to think about.
The one that's always amused me a little is I can't remember how many editions there are now of the Black's Law Dictionary. It's at least 8 or 9. It might even be 10 by now. But if words mean what they mean, why the bloody hell do they need to keep updating the damn thing?
Because it's all a deception. It's like the DSM-5, the psychological statistical manual. They come up with all these mental health disorders, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And Black's Law Dictionary, the law dictionaries are like that. And when people begin to cotton on, they change the definitions. But the law works very slowly. It doesn't like to change the meanings of words. It is quite a slow process. That's the law. But legislation is not the law. It's an entirely separate thing. It's
masquerade.
Legislation is the color of the law. It's not the law.
It's just masquerade, isn't it? Alan, I'm going to set your brain buzzing a little bit, I hope. the one thing that I always want to do more of, but feel like I'm failing miserably at, is increasing the size of the congregation. What tends to happen to most people is they'll go through something devastating, and then because of it, they will become awake and aware. For Jason, it was probably, for me, it was money, but it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Jason. For Jason, it was when he was dealing with the Beckham incidents. And if we speak to most of the people who are awake and aware, there'll have been one incident in their life, a piece of property that was taken from a family member or something really devastating that wakes them up, that actually is that domino when they go bang, fall over, 2 weeks later pick themselves up and then go, right, now what do I do? And makes them. So a lot of events, and Jason and I were guilty of this, we put on events in Sheffield for quite a long time, and the thing that was always difficult was getting the people through the door who weren't yet awake and aware. So my question is, how do we get the people who are going to come to Aware and Awake holidays in December, how do we get them to bring a buddy who's not awake and aware?
Well, that's a very good question. I wish I knew the answer to it.
It was a pretty long-winded one.
Well, all I can say is that as things deteriorate, more people become awake and aware.
Yeah.
As things become more farcical, certainly in the mainstream media, the more people become awake and aware, and they start questioning. And they've only got to be with somebody who's had a direct connection, like either they've had a problem with debt or something like that, and they've realized what's going on. And they ask questions. I mean, I've had people come up to me. They've got an element of doubt, and I just say, "Well, check out this guy. Check out that guy. It's not going to take that long." I think the worse things get, the more open people are becoming. Of course, there's the flip side of that. There's a certain sort of people become even more blinkered, insanely so. I think for most people, really, as things deteriorate more, it becomes more obvious that they're being literally preyed upon. And one of the things that we want to do with this event is it would be really good if people could come along, because it's kind of it's a more gentle way, really. If people can see the failings of history, then they become more aware of that. Then hopefully they might be able to avoid some of the pitfalls that they're likely to encounter in the maybe not too distant future, really, and have a better idea of how to deal with it. And they'd certainly be around a lot of people who have been there and done it and got the T-shirt, so to speak.
And I was just going to add to what Alan said, that some of the topics we have are well within people's personal knowledge. The Beatles, Shakespeare. How many of us have not been exposed to Shakespeare at school, one form or another? And then to introduce people to the notion that actually the associations of these groups or persons are not as we were told, is perhaps easier to absorb that kind of information than it might be to question the present.
Yes, that's a very good point. That is a very, very good point. I mean, most people in my circle of friends who aren't awake and aware, if I said to them, I don't know, you don't need to pay your TV license because it's a con, they would just go, I told you he was a nutter. And that's just with something tiny like a TV license, without getting into laws that aren't, money that isn't, and the world being upside down, a total con, and just warmongering lunatics wanting to take over everything. Just the TV license is enough for them to go, oh, he's just that nutter.
But then if you present people with, say, visual evidence of the Beatles making certain signals on a repeated basis, then that's hard to ignore. Yeah. In fact, very, very difficult to ignore. And if you present people with evidence about Shakespeare that actually we know remarkably little about this person, who's supposed to have been so highly educated, I mean, that on its own is highly anomalous and suspicious. And so I think you can perhaps, this is why we said at the beginning that this event is aimed at people who are at different stages of their awake and aware journey. And we're all at different stages, obviously. And it's suitable for those who may not even have taken a step onto this journey, but who may be interested in understanding the question, well, was Shakespeare the person who was brought up in Stratford-upon-Avon, the son of a glove maker? Or was he somebody about whom a lot has been written and a lot is known?
Inadvertently, you've done something quite sneaky, which is to wake people up without them realising.
Possibly.
Whereas I'm a bit of a sledgehammer kind of guy. You've kind of come round the side door and invited people in and said, look at this. And then in their own brain, they'll be thinking, yeah, but doesn't that mean that can't be true either?
Well, I think it's not that we're trying to do that. I think people, I think children, if we go back to the child, they know the difference between right and wrong, And I think a lot of us do
now, isn't it?
And I think we just get caught up in a kind of false identity or work identity or set of obligations we adopt, And then after a while, we begin to question that, and we get a bit lost, and we really need to get back down to some basic brass tacks, if you like, to use an expression, to look at what is right and what is wrong, because there is a lot of deception going on.
And I think we need to also Alan mentioned children. We need to encourage people to get back into the habit of asking questions. That's why we call the event Questioning History.
Yeah.
Because what can be more natural, really, than to ask questions? And that's essentially, I think, what we're trying to. I don't think we're being deceptive necessarily.
No.
We're just trying to encourage a way of thinking, a critical way of thinking that encourages questioning.
I think the difference really is that most people live in the sort of now and might look at what's affected them in their history, which could be anywhere between, well, no years and let's say 105 years. And most people don't look beyond that. So the sort of things that Jason and I are doing, including tonight and all the other ones we've done and all the meetings we've ever been to or conversations we've had, have all been about something in, if not now, but in very, very recent history. And I think that is what's making your event more unique than even I realized in the beginning. Because if people realize that none of that history is true, even if somebody comes who's completely indoctrinated into the system and they hear your speakers that you've got lined up, they've got to go away thinking and ending up very awake and aware about today. They've got to.
Well, what all we're doing, I guess, to follow that analogy on, is we're inviting people to dig a bit of a hole and look at the foundations, and just look at how solid they are, and what's actually been built on those. And if we just go with, say, Jerry Doherty, we follow a journey with him, looking at the foundations, and he's basically saying, they're very wobbly, mate. The whole thing that's built on top of this, we need to get the scaffolding out, really.
Yeah. I mean, history's even got the word story in it, for God's sake. You know.
It has story, yeah.
Hello, wait, all the words are there, aren't they? All the words are there.
But surely this is what historians should be doing. Interrogating the evidence.
If
what
the
else
truth,
is this?
Sorry, if the truth is the truth, and somebody's swearing blind it's the truth, they shouldn't care about how much digging somebody does, because it must be the truth. Well, it'll still be the truth when whoever's gone looking has found they can't find anything. But the people who make the most noise are those who know that if you go digging, you're going to find something, and they're the ones that always try to be shut up.
Well, quite, but actually, there shouldn't be anything dissident, remotely dissident, about asking questions.
Of course not.
And looking into history, because that's what a good historian does. Look at evidence.
The interesting thing, sorry, I just wanted to. I've been fascinated by the chat that's been going on between Ade and yourselves. But the point I picked up on it is that a lot of this information, if there was somebody who were dragged along, let's say, I don't mean it like literally, but somebody whose wife didn't.
I don't know. We've not met Alan yet. Who knows?
And came along. All the things. Particularly, and I don't want to sound like John Hamer's agent, because I promise you I'm not, but the things like Titanic and stuff like that, that's something that somebody without any knowledge of what we profess to have knowledge of, it would be interested in, would be able to associate with, because it's not in such a it's not such a long past. It is long past, but it's been brought up recently. There's a film and all this sort of thing, and so it's something that perhaps they're interested in. And then of course they have to listen to other people that are there as well. But that's one of the things that have got me intrigued. So that's just what I wanted to
I think it's a great idea that possibly inadvertently could work in more ways than you originally thought.
Well, I'm not that bright, and sometimes that's what happens, which is very pleasing.
Good. That's good. That's good. The best ideas happen in a bar.
Yes.
as opposed to behind bars.
Yeah. Yeah. There is one thing that I wrote down right at the beginning, and Jason and I used to run at least once a month, if not more often, a meeting in Sheffield, and we used to get speakers, and we've had anywhere from 4 to 50 people there, depending on what the subject was, and some quite interesting conversations came of it, and a lot of friendships were built. But when we actually, before we even did the first one, Jason said to me, "You do know that this is not going to end well. We are going to get infiltrated, and you and I have just got to stick together, no matter how much somebody tries to drive a wedge between us." And within 2 years, he was bang on right, because it wasn't even an organisation. We just gave it the Friends of UK column title, just to give it something to call it. But there was no organisation. Nobody made any money. It used to cost Jason and I at least 50 quid a meeting to actually put it on. So there was never anybody making any money out of it. But we got infiltrated. It did get split up. And again, Jason's radar going off. The first time he met the guy, he said to me, "That's what I was talking about. He's the wrong un, and he's the one who's going to split it up." And he was absolutely right.
Hey, thank you.
So my point is, you are clearly good people doing good things for good reasons. Just be aware that everybody who gets involved may not have the same agenda as you.
Well, thank you for that. We have been aware of that, and we have seen this process going on. And I think, I can only speak for myself. I'll just do this anyway, and I accept the consequences. I think we both do, really. And but I can only speak for myself. And it's, for me personally, if I go back again to John Doherty, and I just think of the appalling loss of life in the last century, of people who really felt that they were fighting for a cause that was really worthy. And these are noble, brave people. It's the very least I can do, is to keep this alive and to do this research and to put it out there. And when I compare what I'm sacrificing to their sacrifice, it's pretty insignificant, really.
Yeah. I have to say that most of the people, and I mean 99% of the people that I've come across, aren't there to divide, haven't got a bad, they might do bad things and then recognise it and apologise for it later on, but that their agenda is not a bad one.
Yeah,
it literally is. I mean, what is it I said at that meeting, Jason? Can anybody who works for any authority stand up and declare themselves? And he did.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he stood up and declared himself, and he pretended he was a joke. And I told you before, and I'd said to you, it's him. He is and he ended up costing us a really, really nice venue, and costing the whole thing really. So, but you live and you learn, don't you?
Oh, that's it. You live and you learn. Bottom line, we're just encouraging critical thinking, which is what all good education should be encouraging. So that's why I say this is not a dissident activity. It's doing what education is best at.
I've always hated the awake description, and I think the only other way I could explain it rather than the word awake is you've opened your mind rather than it still being closed. Because I found that when I go to any meetings or whatever, the thing that the people have got in common is that they've all got an open mind and they're willing to listen to somebody else's opinion about a subject.
Yes, and the acronym for our Aware and Awake holidays is AAH. And that's kind of what we hope will be going on in people's minds. with, as you say, awake and open minds.
Mm.
Once your mind is open, then you can have that aha moment, can't you? But
Yeah,
if it's closed, you don't let that in.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask, I had up on your, I had your booking. Please forgive me. I'm just going to bring this up. I just wanted to sort of ask you the question of. I've got the prices in front of the early bird prices. You make quite a good saving, but how would you say it compares to other locations and other conferences for value for money?
Oh well, we've priced. We took a lot of care to ensure that our prices were reasonable. We ran them past several people, for example, to kind of market test reactions. And what people were telling us was that the rates were extremely reasonable, particularly the early bird prices, which now apply for the whole of August and the first 2 weeks of September. And what we're really keen, Alan and I, to do is to see quite a few people register for this event so that we can have a really stimulating event and grow a community. That's I think, Alan, and this is what we want to do, to grow a community. So it's not our aim to retire to the Bahamas, shall we say, on events like this. Far from it. Our aim is to produce community and to try and cover our costs. And as anybody knows who's tried to put on an event like this, I'll be asked in the middle of September to come up with all of the costs. And it would be nice if people are minded to come, if they would care to book before the middle of September, particularly at the early bird rates, because that will cover the costs and relieve some of the constraints.
I've got to say, I'm looking at these now, and I'm looking at these prices now, and I've got to say, for the time of year and the venue that you've got, and I've had a look on your website and I've seen the venue, these are incredibly reasonable prices, and of course you're going to be getting some decent speakers as well. So we're not talking about one of Crane's events where he's going to have Mark Steele on stage threatening everybody if they don't if they don't agree about 5G and all that sort of stuff. But the time of year we're talking about really close to Christmas, so those I think are pretty reasonable prices. And I'm a Yorkshireman, so
This is a man who once paid £9 for a breakfast in a hotel and then spat it at me across the table.
Yeah, we're talking about breakfast. The price is all in, so it's an all-inclusive price that includes breakfast, lunch, dinner, and it is. We're not talking sandwich meals here at all. We're talking really, really good cuisine, and teas and coffees throughout the day, plus nice rooms. You can choose en suite or not, as you prefer. And then 11 speakers, plus whoever volunteers from the audience to come up and speak. That would be additional to the 11 talks that we've got scheduled.
And of course, let's not underestimate the social aspect of it, because there are going to be people that come that perhaps don't get to mix with other people or speak to other people who have similar outlooks on life and what's going on at the moment. So the social aspect of it as well, especially close to a time like Christmas as well, where people can get lonely. And I know how lonely this is. You can be completely lonely. You can be the only one in like an entire room of people and you feel like you need to scream out. You need to tell everybody. I remember when it first hit me back in 2005, 4-5. I was telling everybody I saw. I was driving from work. I was working till 3 o'clock DJing in Mansfield. I remember driving in to get some petrol in a petrol station, and I remember saying to the guy behind the counter, I said, "Do you know what? I think American government did that 9/11. I'm sure they did." And he said, "I can't see them doing it to their own people." And I said, and so everybody I came across, and that's where people then start avoiding you. So if you're the only one, and you get isolated, so there are people like that around. So the social aspect of this as well has got to be really, has got to be really applauded. Especially when it's not just like all the other ones, like the nonsense ones that go around, that are the same thing, that are just like an echo chamber. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
It's nice of you to say that, because we really did have it in mind to create a community, the Ascot, if you like, of the alternative world, a place that people can feel safe going to, expressing views, and that being the norm. You know, asking questions as being completely normal, completely normal activity, and not one that marginalizes you and makes people raise their eyebrows. So I'm very pleased, Jason, that you raised that, because that's so important, such an important objective for us.
I mean, one of the things I think that's happened over the last 20 years is people, their communities have become online. They identify with people online a lot. I mean, certainly, my social media, I would like-minded people who I've never met. I just only know them online. It's like a virtual relationship. And one of the ideas with this event is to change that, so you actually meet people in an organic sense, as opposed to always being online.
Well, I don't have Facebook. I don't have Twitter. I've got a smartphone, and I use WhatsApp, and that's it. I just do not do social media, news, anything like that, because the whole lot just drives me mad. You can see 4 people sat at a table, supposed to be sharing a meal, and each of them are on a different screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like nobody's talking to anybody anymore.
Well, that's why we went for a 2-day event and not just a 1-day, as Alan explained, because we think you're more likely to develop social contacts over 2 days than over 1. I mean, Alan, you were telling me something interesting about having gone to a David Icke event.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going down to Brixton a few years ago now, and we all sat there 5 hours or whatever it was. It was really good. And then we all left, and there's like thousands of us all wanting to talk about the information, all the other stuff. And we kind of ended up going into the few pubs that were going on, and then that was it. And there was a great opportunity there for people to actually make friends, or in a real sense, to really connect, but there wasn't the time to do it. Whereas hopefully in this event, after somebody talks, there'll be dinner, you can get to meet people, you can change tables or whatever, go for a walk. And then also in this venue, there are a lot of small kind of sitting rooms, so you don't have to sit and watch somebody talk. You could maybe peel off with some other people and just sit down, have a cup of tea. There's coffee, refreshments on 24/7. They've got the machines there. You can talk to the early hours of the morning in a really nice sitting room. It's not a problem at this venue.
Yeah, the point I was going to make is that we shouldn't denigrate the help and the support that people get from they get online. I know it's a lot better face to face, and you can really, when you're looking somebody in the eyes, and you can tell the soul. But we shouldn't really lessen the impact that people supportive of each other online. We've got a little community here on Raconteurs News. We've got our chat rooms usually got loads of regulars in it, as tonight, and this is a little community, and we've all been through things together. I mean, I had a leg amputated last year, and not long ago, one of the listeners had some problems and had to go through some stuff, and the support that they get online from these people, they don't know them at all. I mean, we're wanting to put something together and have a little get together where anybody that can we'll go and meet people, because we love that. That's best. It's like playing poker online. I don't like playing poker online, but I like playing poker live, because I can see what somebody's in somebody's face. So I don't want to denigrate that. We've got great online, but yeah, when you meet somebody and you see, and you're talking to them, and you can see them in their eyes, and you can see what's real, and of course that then it becomes like a bit of a treat, because you're not used to it, and it's something. It's also skills that we need to learn to be able to communicate with each other and talk to each other, because these skills are being lost all over the place. The ability to talk to people. It's either if two people don't agree, usually step one is to have a fight or an argument or a row and call each other stuff. So the more that we can get together, then the better it is. So and this sounds like it's something that's probably worth going to. Been to loads myself. Been to loads, haven't we, Ada? Loads of these conferences and stuff.
I'll tell you what. I'm just looking at these prices, and I don't know. Knowing how much it costs to put on events in hotels, I don't know how you're doing that. I really don't. If that includes all the food, that's astonishing.
Well, that's it's basically full board, and all the talks, all those speakers coming in as well, and hopefully it will be the first of many. But we did really have to look at a lot of places. We did, didn't we? Really.
I paid that much for one night in a crap hotel, half an hour outside London.
Oh well, I'm comforted to hear your reactions, and as I say, we did quite a lot of work before we settled on these prices, because Alan and I are both strongly motivated to create community in the run up to Christmas.
Yeah.
We're very hard.
We're really happy that we've been at least a tiny bit of your journey. We've been a little part of, because the way it's set up and the pricing that you've got. Seriously, I don't know how you're doing it for that, knowing how much it costs to even. I remember I'd put on an event. This is quite a long time ago, 20 odd years ago, and it wasn't about this subject. And I'd spent, it was thousands with the hotel for a one-day event, plus food for 30 odd people, etc., etc. And I went to him about a minute before the event started. Said, "You don't happen to have a spare lectern for that second room, do you?" He said, "Yeah, I'll just add that £45 rent for the day, the bill."
Oh yes,
45 quid to rent a lectern that come out of his cupboard.
I know it's
terrible.
But
can we just encourage people? Some of the best prices, maybe you're looking at those, are the early bird ones, which, as I said, are available till the end of August, and then some other prices in the first 2 weeks of September. So I know we all tend to put things off, and this event isn't until December. But if anybody's interested in signing up, then the best prices are available in these early periods. And then also, of course, you secure your place there, because we've only got a limited number of places. So if you can make that decision sooner rather than later, that would be great. And maybe organise to bring some friends along, and maybe bring that person who isn't fully aware and awake. Maybe, you'll be opening their eyes.
You could find your old history professor from university and invite him.
Because
that might go down well.
There's a talk on Shakespeare. You can say that's quite kosher. Really.
Yeah, absolutely.
A talk on Shakespeare. Well, listen, we're not keeping you, are we? Because I do remember when I spoke to you, Gloria, earlier on that Alan was wanting to go out for a drive tonight. So we're not holding you back, are we?
Well, I was gonna have to make a move quite shortly, but
well, if you need to get yourselves off, then me and Ade can wrap up the last 20 minutes of the show, talking just nonsense to each other, really. But it's been fantastic having you on. Just again, anything you want to add, just at the end, and of course, I'll stick the website up onto the screen. Anything you want to add as we finish?
Well, I'd like to thank you both enormously for giving us such a warm welcome.
Pleasure.
And for being on the same wavelength, for seeing the value of what Alan and I are trying to do. That for me is
it's an endorsement.
It's just wonderful that you can see the value of what we're trying to do.
Just shows that not all the good ideas have been had yet.
Well, may sound a bit, I don't know, may not, I don't know, but we really are trying to we feel there's a place for building more community, and even for those. This is for people of all ages, from young to middle to beyond middle, And, it can be quite a lonely place to be, not just at Christmas, but when you're in this space of questioning. I think you alluded to that earlier, Jason.
Yeah.
Finding other like-minded people can be quite hard. And if you're single, that can be, it can be quite difficult to find the other half who sees eye to eye with you on issues.
Yeah,
So,
I kind of ended up being single because I became awakened aware right at the beginning of a relationship, and then when she just said I just turned into a lunatic. So.
And so we thought, this is also for a space who may be looking, a space for people who may be looking for another half. Because how can you settle into a relationship with somebody you don't see eye to eye with? I know some people manage that, but it's probably easier if you don't have to encompass those challenges, I think. So that's what I'd like to add. A big thank you to you both. And Alan, would you like to add something?
Well, yeah. When you were just talking, I can think of somebody I know, and it's the other way around. The wife is really awake and aware, and the husband's not really interested at all, but they get on really well, and they just accept that there is this difference, and I find that really quite amazing. And they've been married for years, and I've been around to stay with them and all that kind of stuff. But I always find myself, I have different sort of groups of friends, and I have to kind of censor myself. I really don't like that. And one of the things about this event is I know I can go there and I don't have to censor myself. I can say my opinions. I can say what I think. I can say what's going on in my head. I don't have to worry about offending anybody or anything like that. I can be myself. And I really like that old maxim, to thine own self be true, because that's becoming increasingly difficult these days, both legally and socially as well. It's very difficult to be who you are and to be true to yourself. So
I have to say, though, once you become awake and aware and you've opened your mind, that is the only time that anybody's got any chance of being completely honest with themselves.
Absolutely, yeah.
You do that, you realise that you haven't been in the past.
Honesty is key to everything, really. Absolutely.
It is. Absolutely, yeah. And on that note, we'll say thank you very much to Gloria Moss and Alan of Salisbury down there in London. He's going to go out for a bit of a drive. Gloria was telling me earlier on, but it's been fantastic having you on. It's anytime you've got any other, if you want to come on beforehand, before the date, if you've got the last few tickets you want to get rid of or anything like that, or if there's anything else that you want to tell us, any other events that you're doing, then please don't hesitate. You'll have an up and doer. We'll just drop us a line. You've got my email address, and we can get you on. So big thank you to you, Gloria Moss and Alan of Salisbury.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Right, then, Ade. It's just me and thee then, mate.
Just before I think that was really good. Really. And honestly, I mean, the highest price that I've got on here for these early birds is a single room, because it's always more expensive for fucking lonely twats like me to go anywhere, isn't it? Is 190 quid. And that's all in, full board, 2 days. That's That's
what I thought. I thought it were, especially at that time of year as well. I mean, they must have Christmas parties and all that. They're probably got a fucking basement or something. I don't know.
No, I'm just saying that is. I think that's really good. Really good. So, if you want to find that, what's the website address, Jason? Here we go. Awakeandawareholidays.wixsite.com. It's a little bit slow to load, but I guess it's a budget website, and but bloody hell, yeah. I honestly don't know how they're doing that for that money in a venue such as that. I don't think it's ever going to be the Barnsley Greyhound racing of the Truth Movement, as opposed to the Ascot of the Truth Movement. It's definitely a nice venue. Definitely a nice venue.
Fucking Barnsley Greyhound racing. What's up with you?
Ascot.
Let's say hello to some people who are in chat room. Same man's in there. He's talking of Super Leeds as well. Super Leeds was on Friday. Somebody's give me a bit of praise on how I had dealt with him, because he told me he was sober, but that's not how it ended up with me. Apple Charlotte, good evening to you. She's in there as well. The darling of the chat room, as I think we should call her, since New Being's not been around for a while. Anybody seen her, New Being, anywhere? Anyone? Buemler. Super Leeds has been in. Matt Caddy as well, and I'm sure he's listening with and watching with his missus as well, Donna. I hope it's his missus. I hope they're not brother and sister. I don't want to sound like it. Yeah. Anyway, Matt, good evening to you, mate. I know they're from there. I think they're from Sheffield. I'm pretty sure. Steve Owens is in there, tuned in late. He says he will watch from the start. It sounds interesting, yeah. Patrick Nee's in. Good evening to you, Patrick. Shill Destroyer, Jerry, son of Mick. Uni Black Sister, who came on Friday as well. We were talking about incels. Did you hear that one? Have you heard of incels?
What's that? What is it?
Incels. They're like this fucking. You know how you get like these radical feminists.
Oh yeah.
Who are like radical. They hate men because men don't find them attractive. Right.
Yeah. Good point.
Once, yeah. Right. So there's this. It's like a mirror image, and they're called incels. And the incel, it stands for involuntarily celibate, right? And these are blokes that can't get fucking laid. And what they're doing though is they're like setting up these meetings. They're going on Tinder. They put in picture of a fucking right fit bloke like me or you or something, right? On
or Webby or yeah.
Oh, Webby, yeah, or Webby, or Super Leeds, and or Heath, and then like they put in them pictures on, and then they're meeting up with these birds like on Tinder and stuff like that, who think they're going along to like shag somebody fucking awesome like me or you, and yet then they turn up and they shame them and call them slags and all that sort of thing. But there's also this other one as well. There was there was this one particular one who decided they were going to take his incelness out of some old people, and he went and shot and killed a few people. I think 14 people, including himself. So but it's a new thing, and I don't know who's created it, but very good creation. You had radical feminists, and then you have these radical what do you call them, masculinists.
Just the world's full of people complaining about people who actually they are. Like Antifa and it's not only that people want to complain anymore, it's the fact that they want to complain about the people who are just like them. And the whole thing just, I just find it quite amusing once you sort of step back from it all and look at it.
Well, it is amusing. It's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
If it weren't so serious, but it's very serious, isn't it?
And the sad thing is, even supposedly intelligent people don't see it. Just don't see it at all.
I thought I'd pop that on screen for you, Ada. That's you sorted for tonight, isn't it?
Nah. She's clearly had her lips done.
Eyes not slit enough.
Nah.
Okay, I'll take it out. Alan Charlotte, she's choking for a fag. A fag? She's choking for a shag, she says. Nice one. Nice one, Apple Charlotte. And we've got about 10 minutes left to fill. So, what's I've been doing over the weekend? Have you your motorbike out?
Yeah. I just went out on my bike, chilled a bit, sat at a cafe, had a cup of tea, talked bollocks, and then came home twice, 2 days. Brilliant.
You know what? On Classic Emmerdale today, Classic Emmerdale on ITV3 this afternoon, got a bit fucking heated. Somebody called somebody a daft apeth.
No.
Honestly, I thought it was going to kick off, but it didn't. It flaming didn't.
It flame. I tell you what, I've actually got into watching The Bill on Drama.
Oh yeah, we watched that, man. Yeah,
It's mega.
It's mad, isn't it? You see them all coming in and going out and that, and same people coming along. You see one week they're like a con or something, and the week after they're a fucking head of CID or something. Fucking it's like they had a really small pool of actors, but everybody that you know now, everybody who became like famous. I think I saw fucking one of them off In Betweeners on it other week.
Oh yeah.
And it's awesome. You've got it. It's just fucking awesome. They always solve crime. You
can always look at your watch and think, well, they're going to have to work it out in a minute because I don't think this is a double episode.
Yeah, and they always do. They always work it out. It's awesome. Yeah, we like that. We like a bit of Bill. But you see, then straight after, I watch it in daytime. On daytime, I think it's about fucking 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock it comes on. And then afterwards, it's old EastEnders. Honestly, it's EastEnders when Mitchell Brothers have just turned up and have got hair and everything. They've just turned up into Square. It's like really weird. It's strange. Classic Emmerdale, then there's classic Coronation Street. You've got to watch classic Coronation Street. Ade, I implore you, because it is the Reg Holdsworth era. It is fucking awesome. Yes, come back to my house and you look at my entrance. Oh yes, yeah. Fucking brilliant. Reg Holdsworth era. Get in.
Oh dear, my God. No, we have got to laugh, haven't you? You've got to.
Oh, you fucking hell! I tell you what, it were a lot better back then.
I tell you what, though, I'm just looking at this event and I'm seriously thinking. I've looked in my diary and I've not got anything on 14th, 15th of December. I'm seriously thinking about going down there.
So we should.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what did it is when she said I might meet the love of my life. That's got to be worth 190 quid, isn't it?
All the love, if you like. Yeah, well, you might do. You fucking very well might do.
Yeah.
You might have just been speaking to her.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. So, no, I'm seriously look at that venue is stunning. Absolutely stunning. Yeah. Just really don't know how they've done that for that money. So, and that's whether I go or not. But yeah, nice folks as well. It was interesting when Alan said he'd done the stuff with John Harris, with the law and stuff.
Yeah.
So Alan clearly knows his stuff, not just about the incorrectness of ancient history, but also about what affects us today. Clearly the both of them knew the stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, they were interested in last little foray before I go in there and fucking they do what they do to me.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Jason's back in hospital Thursday, aren't you, pal?
Wednesday. Wednesday.
Yeah, but just having a bit of plumbing done. So he's going to be out of action for a bit. The lazy git. But he's, you are going to post stuff so that people know what's going on, aren't you, Jason? So
yeah, let people know. So
we're hoping quite quickly that we can get back into doing something more regular as well. But
get some guests on because it was good to have some guests on tonight. And like I say, I've not been booking them. But Mark sent me that. I've not been booking them because I didn't know what were going to be happening. But Mark sent me that on Friday, and I'd already got the date for my operation, so I knew that I could do it. So I just get in touch and get them on. So I think it went all right.
Yeah, dead interesting stuff. Dead interesting. Do you know? I mean, I'm as guilty as anybody because the only real history that I'm ever really worried about is the history that I remember and that might have affected, my family, probably back as far as my great granddad. I've never really, the dates of wars and all that, but none of us really sort of, or very few of us actually look really seriously at a subject of history, one particular thing, and nail it down. Because it's just not the sort of thing that we do, because we're all too busy working out what we're going to do for the rest of the day. So yeah, I think it's a cracking angle to get people thinking, well, what else that really does affect today isn't true either. Brilliant.
Yeah. Here we go. People telling me, look, all the best. Thank you very much for that. I just keep your fingers crossed and pray to whoever you pray to, whether it's me, AD, or Webby. Just gives a
pray to me if you want, but I won't be fucking listening.
Yeah,
I'll be far too busy.
Oh God, I've got a sore ass and all, Oh, ass cheek, not a sphincter. I don't like
was
that.
just kind of I was just wondering.
I've been in my wheelchair for the last couple of days, so I've not really been out of it. So I've got a bit of
just
a
while we've got a few minutes, anybody listening who has got a subject that they would like to come and talk about, and I mean a particular subject that you think's important, then drop a message in, and even if you want to come on for half an hour or whatever, and let's start being more inclusive like that. But we do want it to be about a subject, and probably not 5G or fracking or all the usual stuff. If you've got anything else, send a message up and we'll pick up on it.
Yeah, definitely. We certainly will. The Super Leeds history of Leeds United, he says. No, I don't think we'll bother with that one, shall we not?
I ain't fucking that long.
Oh, God, I've got a real fucking spot on my arse. Oh, Jesus Christ. A bit of a autism talk in the Apple. Charlotte is saying she's autistic. And so
Can you just ask her to knock us a Rembrandt out then, please?
Yeah. Can you? Yeah, I'll chuck some things on floor for you.
Yeah.
And count them right quick. Steve's is Steve's there as well. I think we've come to end. We're going to finish, I think, about a minute early or something like that. A minute and a half early, but I think that's where we're at. Oh, God, really sore ass. Spot on my ass. Oh, it's really doing me in. And should things go wrong, and this is my final thing, that be your lasting memory of me moaning about a big spot on my arse. Right, anyway, we'll be back when we're back. We'll be back when we can be back. Believe me, we will be. And we'll see you very soon. Always give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you thought it were crap. It's been good numbers tonight as well. And it's great to see all you people in the chat room. It's nice to know people are listening to us. In fact, they're probably not. They're probably just chatting with each other in chat room. But
that's fine. Doesn't matter. They don't have to listen to the shit that we spout.
They don't. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll see you later. It's all right a bit.
Take it easy.